This is Jared Ethan Black. You're listening to Genesis, Episode 3, Image of God. I am approaching this with you intentionally in a bit more literary. Some of that is because that's how you're learning, and you've put a lot of literary pieces together in the works that you've already spent many hours reading through, annotating, discussing, chewing on. Biblical narrative, biblical scripture, regardless of if you've yet determined for yourself how authoritative you're going to allow it to be in your life. Approach it. If nothing else, at least in this time, let the story come off the page. It is an unbelievable, fantastic, in the truest sense of that term. It's a fantastic story. I mean, story is marked. All story is marked by its conflict and resolution. If you've got a good story, you've got unbearable conflict. I mean, you've got insurmountable conflict. And if the story is good, you'll see the resolve of that conflict. I mean, when you get down to it, people who are story crafters, storytellers, they really do come down to there are very few storylines in every movie, every novel, every painting. The storylines are just, it's a bare minimum. And then it's the details, it's the flavoring that gets put in there, the characters, the characterization, the settings. The timelines, the periods, the histories, all of that begins to add flavor. My intention with you is to take this story, which has impacted your world. I mean, the storyline is well in progress. It has shaped nations. It has shaped individuals. And so you must be familiar with it so that you know how to shape and craft going forward. Again, you can decide the authoritativeness that you will allow this book to have in your life. But I want to show you the story. I want to give you a reason to lend your ear to it. So we've been looking at the beginning. I mean, it's just like any great story. I mean, you've got things are being thrown on the canvas of this storyline that are important. And if we get the time that I think we're going to have, I want to show you how it spans 66 books, how the themes presented in the first 4 verses find their resolve. And if you're so blessed, when you see the resolve of the grand story, you have the opportunity, the invitation to find yourself, little old you, little old me, right in the middle of it to experience the resolve within yourself. If we accomplish that together, we will have done something of note, something that marks eternity. I don't think I'm oversaying it. I don't think I'm in hyperbole. I think that's how potent this really can be. So why would we take 66 books written so many years ago by so many disconnected authors and editors? Why would we do that? I mean, what importance does this have for our life? Wait and see. Wait and see. Because we're dealing with an active God, a present world reality. A spirit, yes, but more than the definition of a spirit than we have. It's a wind. It's a movement. It's a vibration. Sure, an energy. We can talk universally if we choose to, but the idea is this God, this wind, this light, this life is active now. You're already plugged in, you just may not know it. Let me tell you how the story continues. We've talked about God who is introduced before any other characteristic we learn through the storyline in progress. We learn that this God in these narratives is light and life. And then we learn that this God who is light and life has the cultural significance of accomplishing for all would-be divine beings the title of king, because this God has split the chaotic waters with the breath of his mouth, the ruach, the wind, the spirit of his mouth. That's what it meant in this ancient world, this ancient Near Eastern world view, that if you're going to define yourself as king of the gods, you must deal with the chaos. You must deal with the nothingness. You must deal with that which encroaches to dismantle and disorganize and disintegrate. If you cannot do that, you are not king of the gods. But this God is displayed in the first 4 verses of having accomplished that. And then we see opened up for us this incredible array of orderedness that happens in the midst. The waters from above are split from the waters from beneath. And in that ordered space, God creates. What does God create? Well, this is an Eastern text. And it's hard for us because we are all very Western-minded. We just sort of were born into it. Our culture is saturated with it, which isn't bad. It's got great pros. At the same time, it has some negatives, some gaps, some things that you have to do. So if you're going to begin to think Eastern, it's going to be like putting on a funny hat. And that's really all it is. You're never going to quite fit in it because that's not who you are. It's not what you've been born into. But you can gain some value by putting on the funny hat that's either too small or too big, depending on the size of your head. So you put this hat on, in an Eastern story, if it's at all talking about beginnings, it's going to include the elements. We don't think elementally anymore. We think atomically. We think about units of things put together to create a system. Easterns, no. It's the elements. Earth, wind, fire, and water. And those are the 4 biggies. Later on we can add metal when we get smarter and we build swords. But for now, earth, wind, fire, and water. Think about it. The first 4 verses, 6 verses, what do you see? You get the wind of God hovered over the surface of the waters, and then God creates land, earth. The Adamah is what it is in Hebrew. Why is that important? Well, because from the Adamah, he brings forth Adam. The wordplay in Hebrew is just, it jumps off the page. From the Adamah, the earth, the clay, the red, God brings forth Adamah, which is as much a humanity word as it is the thought of this one dude hanging out in the garden. The Adam is first. He is the first of beings, created from the Adamah, the earth. So you've got earth, you've got wind, you've got water. I'm going to tease you out a little bit. We don't see fire until this very moment, but I'm going to play with it more with you next week. Because it's interesting where fire comes in, because if you know Eastern thought, fire, of the 4 basic elements, is the most rarefied. Fire, distinct from earth, wind, and water, it's not so much a substance as it is the transition of a substance. So when you see and experience fire, what you're seeing and experiencing isn't a thing itself. You're experiencing the transition of a thing into something else. You following me? It's the reaction. Think chemistry. If you make fire, what you did is you just accelerated a reaction, a transition of something. It went from one state to another. And in that you got light and heat. So it shows up in this narrative right about here. But before we really look at that, I'm going to nerd out on you guys next week. I'm going to have a big easel and we're going to draw. And I hope I don't bore you. No, I think you're going to like it. The Bible actually is incredibly useful for the visual learner. Hebrew in particular is a visual art. It paints pictures with the words, the characters that form the words. But before we get there, you got to hear this because it's at the end of Genesis 1. We get this whole scene of creation. You get earth and wind and yes, fire. And we'll look more deeply at that. But it's not just creating land, it's the orderedness of land. It's not just creating the heavens, it's the orderedness of heaven. That's the power of creation. It's not just the waters, it's the orderedness of the waters that's of importance to the Eastern mind. You've got creatures in it that teem. That's the word they use. They teem, and they make other creatures just like themselves. On the earth, you get vegetation, you get bushes and trees, and they have in them the created capability of displaying kind after kind, which means this: they can reproduce themselves. It's as if God, the Creator, the Master King of all, according to this story, is so confident in his creating abilities that he relinquishes creative capability into his creation for the purpose of it recreating itself perpetually. And so a tree will produce a fruit, and then that fruit has a seed, and that seed will drop to the ground. That seed will go into the ground and technically die for the purpose of regeneration. The story, the grand conflict of death and life, has been infused in every single living bit. It's really cool. You're reminded of it constantly, and we are so head down, sad to say, head in a dang screen, that we just miss the beauty of the conflict and resolution. We have a 12-month cycle of it. You see the leaves come, the life explodes, and then you see it wither and it goes back in, only to regenerate again. And you're reminded every year of this grand story that you're in. Every year. The reason that this story starts from, and there was darkness and there was light, there was evening and there was morning, that's very significant for you to know. God's version, this God's version, always moves from dark to light. It's the progression of the Spirit of God. You move from the disorder to order, which you should be thinking, that's a conflict with a scientific principle that you've learned. That things always move to an element of disorder. Enter Yahweh. Light and life moves in the opposite direction. It produces order where there was no order. Now, we get to the end of this creation, we get to the grand crown of creation. This is described in a 6th day of a 7-day ordeal, that this God has displayed his kingship by accomplishing order in the midst of chaos. And on the 6th day, we see that that probably familiar phrase to you now if you ever spent any time in Sunday school: let us make man, Adam, in our image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Again, I will nerd out next week on this, and you will have a picture that you may never have seen displayed before. But for now, I want to focus on this one term: image. Seen Lion King? I mean, one of the biggest pivotal scenes in The Lion King is young Simba has run away from his responsibilities, his calling, his order in society, because he watched his dad, Mufasa, great King Mufasa, die. And he took the blame. He was blamed for it, and he received the blame. And so young Simba is off, and the crazy monkey comes and begins to blow the wind of truth into his ear, and young Simba's confused. And so you know the scene, right, where he finds his way to the water's edge at night. It's reflective because of the night sky, and young Simba, still quite weak and frail and gangly, looks in the water, and who does Simba see? Whose reflection of Simba comes back at him? Oh, you know it. Mufasa. Yeah. And then you get that thing of, remember who you are. Right? Remember who you are. And that's the pivotal, that's the turning moment. That's where resolution begins to come, because Simba figures out, or remembers, oh my gosh, I am by design, by title, by ordination, I am the king. I'm the rightful heir. And so the story goes on, and of course he goes and takes his position. It's awesome. I mean, it's really well displayed. Yay, Disney. Yay, Disney. For all the things that people get mad at Disney about, they got that one right. I think I've read this. If you were with me last year, you've heard me kind of do this, but it's important. I want to bring everyone up to speed, because if you miss this piece, you truly find yourself in what the evangelicals ultimately wind up terming this idea of lost. If you're lost, I mean, we made it weird in a lot of ways, but there's something about lostness that is a grand human expression. We all feel it in some way. But you got to get back and say, has something been lost? What's been lost? And by whose determination? I love, for whatever reason, that those guys and gals that were really good at carving things out of stone, Michelangelo in particular, he had some great quotes that are attributed to him. And so Michelangelo, great artist across many mediums, but one in particular is the ability to take a raw piece of stone and create something beautiful. And it's said that he said, carving is easy. You just go down to the skin and stop. Why? Well, he'd already seen what was in the stone. He just went down to where it was and he quit carving once he found it. Every block of stone has a statue inside it. It's just simply the task of the sculptor to discover it. I like that. And then here's my favorite one. I saw the angel inside the marvel, and I carved until I set him free. That's a great quote. That's a great line. It was already there. In his mind, it was already there. He simply freed him in it. If you ever have a chance out west, go to Mount Rushmore for sure. In fact, go there first. Because Mount Rushmore is very grand in its own right. I mean, the fact that someone carved 4 heads on a mountainside is pretty epic. I mean, it's a lifetime of work accomplished in that. But do yourself a favor. See Mount Rushmore, take your picture, get your postcard, and then get in your car and go over to Crazy Horse. Crazy Horse is the lesser known at this point because it's still under construction. Crazy Horse is also a mountain sculpture approach. But Crazy Horse is far grander. Yeah, you get 4 heads in Mount Rushmore, and that's awesome. But in the Crazy Horse Mountain, you get the bust of a horse head carved into the mountain with this outstretched arm of the Indian and the head of the Indian with the headdress. I mean, it's huge. You can take the entire Mount Rushmore 4 heads, and they fit in the head of the horse. That's how big this thing is. And it's a whole family that has dedicated multiple generations. We don't think like this, by the way. Multiple generations, father, mother, to sons and daughters. Their understanding of mathematics, having never been to university, is unparalleled. And then the chemistry and the physics required to make an explosion deep in a rock that carves skin deep is incredible. Do yourself a favor. You've got to go see it. It really is. How many of you have seen it? Yeah. Isn't it impressive? I mean, you just go, oh. I worry about very, very small things. Not, I'm going to go carve a ginormous image in a mountain. There's something about images that, I mean, they bring back to memory. They are impressive. They set up for us a place of remembering. We, of course, with Mount Rushmore, you see the history of our country and a bit on display. And certainly Crazy Horse is there to display the history before the history of our country. It's intended to be an incredible piece of remembrance that we did not come by this without great loss and hardship. I mean, there's a lot going into that carving. There's a lot to remember. let us create man in our image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. That word, image, it's got a significance just under the stone that has grown over it. It's the word zelem in Hebrew, and that's a very peculiar and specific word for Hebrew. It does mean image. I mean, that's a good translation, but it carries a depth of meaning that you need to know about. Because if you follow this story, you're right here in this, you show up in Genesis 1:26. Your little life and my little life emanates from this very point. And it is contained in the word zelem. I want you to come over to the water's edge right now, and I want you to look in, and I want you to see a reflection staring back at you. It's a zelem. It's meant to cause you to remember something. The word zelem in Hebrew does mean image. It really, more specifically, has the idea of a statue. So follow the storyline. And we're Eastern, by the way. If you're an Eastern king conquering a nation or a whole plain or plateau in your conquesting efforts, you have to do things to establish your kingdom. You have to do things to prove out or to settle the area with your authority. One of the ways that kings would do this, and it's littered throughout all of the scriptural heritage, also all the epics that you read, it was not uncommon at all. In fact, it was a part of great practice for a conquering king to set up his image statue somewhere in the middle of those townships or those outlying areas. Why? I mean, is it that they were so egotistical that they wanted people to see their face carved in stone? Not so much. It had a deeper import. They did it so that it would be no question as to who it is that rules and reigns that region. It was simply to be when you saw the zelem, when you saw the statue, the image that had been erected in your area, you were to be reminded on a continual basis who it was that had authority there. That's it. It was a way of conquering and establishing the arena of your activity. If the king says something 400 miles away, it does apply to the outbounds of his or her kingdom. Why? Because the zelems are established to show the boundaries, to show where that authority rules and reigns. So this kingdom of the king, kingdom of God, is really the full arena of the activity or the authority of this God. In the creation story, it's displayed by ripping open the waters and putting order where there was once no order. In the crown of creation, day 6, right here, you and I enter the story in the image of God, in the zelem of God. He created them, male and female, who created them. The zelem of God, pick it up. Humanity, Adam, from Adamah, was placed as the crown of creation for a very specific purpose. I say to you, remember who you are. If humanity is put in this green-blue ball as the zelem of God, the statue, the image of God, why? The cosmos, the rest of creation, the stars, the mountains, the trees, the waters, the council of divinity, when they look upon humanity, what are they supposed to encounter? Who are they supposed to encounter? When the subject in an outlying area looks upon the zelem of the king, who do they encounter? The king. The image of the king, the zelem of the king, the authority of the king, the ruling of the king. It's no different with you and I. Your purpose, just being born, sitting in these seats, is far greater than you may have ever imagined. You and I and us collectively, we are the zelem of God. Establishing a focal point for the rest of creation to peer in and go, oh, okay, I know who's in charge now. I know who orders this place. I know who it is that has authority, that rules and reigns. Have you ever thought of your life that way? I mean, it truly is that chiseled. It's who you are. So this idea of being lost can really come from the fact that we simply don't remember who we are. We don't know that our life, at its very foundational level from the very beginning of this story, our lives are established as Zelims. We are part of the grand fabric of the image of God in grander creation. I wish we thought more about the cosmos as they did 400 years ago. It's a very helpful worldview because you can establish yourself in the midst of a fixed unit. It's helpful. It may not be the way things actually play out as we get smarter and smarter or dumber and dumber, depending on which way you want to look at it. But it's there. Like, it's a helpful orientation. That's who you are. I mean, as you stare into the abyss, I want you to see reflected back at you the story. And the story declares right from the beginning, the purpose of humanity, which you are a part, is you image. You reflect. You show off. You display a piece of the authority of God in the arena of God's activity. That's not a bad calling, is it? You're attached deeply to the King of the universe, established by the King's own ability, drawnness toward conquering the chaos. So when your little life has chaos and my little life has chaos, take heart. You've been established already, and then collectively, and then more broadly, humanity at large. Our whole purpose, we image God. I can't wait to show you what happens when humanity gets a hold of this reality. Remember who you are. Father, I pray that you would do what only you can do. You would take words and you would translate them to light, life, clarity, hope, purpose, direction. May the arena of your activity find itself displayed in this very school and in each of these very lives. In your name, Jesus.
There's so many questions in my head, it's like a carousel spinning. Just when I think I'm at the end, I find I'm at the beginning. Well, if I had the chance to ask him, would I even know where to start? Yeah. Would I ask them chronologically right from the creation? Or would I start with the finale, the book of Revelation? Maybe I should stop my thinking, let the questions flow.